Hi guys, my name is David and welcome back to my channel. Today I am going to be reviewing a very fun and very easy book. This is the book that wasn't on my radar at all. I was inspired to pick this book up or search a book based on this subject by another channel, and that book being All About Boggarts by H.F. Morton. Now, if you were to ask me what a boggart was without reading this, I would have just simply said it's a fictional character based in the Harry Potter world, and it made Alan Rickman transform wearing a dress. But there's a channel that I have recently come into contact with and recently become aware about, and that is called The Dark Side of the Moor. To summarize their channel would be a extreme endeavor to actually do, as they do cover a wide range of stuff. Yes, they do talk about British folklore and legends and history on their channel, as well as some supernatural paranormal stuff. And one of these things that they were talking about was boggarts. Now, I had no idea what a boggart was, but there was a monster on the thumbnail, and I clicked on it and I watched it, and it was extremely interesting. I have no idea what drew me to um these creatures. I suppose it was a interest and a belief that these creatures might have actually existed back in the day, and that's coming from someone that doesn't believe in ghosts or paranormal or psychic beliefs. But these creatures could have been real at one point and then gone extinct hundreds, maybe thousands of years ago. Now, I'm not saying that I 110% believe that boggarts are real, but what I'm saying, it's a possibility that I believe in them, or at least an aspect of them. So after I watched some videos from the Dark Side of the Moor, which this video is dedicated to their channel, I'll have their channel linked down below, so I would highly recommend that you go and watch them. They do film in very, very beautiful locations. And even though their channel isn't strictly about boggarts, it's not a boggart based channel, they do discuss them and bring them up every now and then. So after I watched a couple of their boggart based videos, I was wondering, it would be really interesting if there was a book based around these types of creatures. So I went on eBay and just simply typed boggart, and this came up, as well as some other books, but this is the one I chose to purchase. This is a limited run or a limited edition book. There was only 500 of these ever made, and despite that, it wasn't at all expensive. It was very cheap, and this is the 69th copy of 500. So what basically is a boggart? Now, a boggart is described as being a fairy, a goblin, and essentially they are tricksters and pranksters. They like to like trick people. They like to bask in the misery of others, and they like to torment people. Some boggarts are nicer to people and nastier to others. There is a boggart in this book which was living in a guy's basement, and the boggart was very friendly to this man, and it absolutely hated another one. But overall, boggarts kind of live in a house or a wooded area or countryside, and they're extremely hard to get rid of. And going back to how they're described in the Harry Potter world, in that universe, no one knows what a boggart looks like, because it can change its appearance based on the individual that is in front of it at that moment in time, and it can transform itself into what that person fears the most. So overall, in the wizarding world of Harry Potter, a boggart doesn't have one um, yeah look. And like what I've just said, boggarts as a whole, they can look different. They do have different appearances. All boggarts don't look the same. Some may look different and bigger or smaller or meaner. So there is a foreword by a lady called Gabrielle M. Cook, which describes about having her being read these stories by Morton himself. When she was a child, he used to go over there and read them to her. As far as I'm aware, Morton didn't actually put this book together himself. What happened, Gabrielle came across these stories in various chests and places and compiled them together into this book. There is a map which focuses around Lancashire, which is near Blackpool. I believe Blackpool is up here, and oh no, it's down there. It's down there. I thought it was further north. So it was very interesting to read about these different types of boggart stories and just look at the locations about where they were. And the book kind of has a introduction at the start where it has a chapter called All About Boggarts, and it has these illustrations in them as well. And the intro just has a kind of a summary about what boggarts are and yeah, all what they represent and yeah, all that stuff. And then it has several stories, I believe 4 or 5, where it has where it discusses kind of in depth, but not over the top in depth, about Pacific Boggarts and about who they tormented and what they did to them. It doesn't go into the deep lore about this Boggart, where it came from, and what it wants. It just says, right, here's the boggart, lives in this town. This is the person or persons that they don't like, and this is their kind of quirks of the boggarts, and this is what they do to this person. And the degrading people is a big part about what boggarts like to do. They like to kind of get people down off their high horses and kind of humiliate them and ridicule them in front of their community. Well, that's what I got from this book anyway. So we've got the first boggart, which is called the Horwich Boggart, which tormented this headmaster, which very rarely ever washed, and I couldn't imagine ever washing, or very rarely ever washing. I mean, apart from smelling really bad, I mean, it would just feel really bad on your skin, and you would just feel really horrible. You've got the Turton Boggarts. You got the Dane Boggarts, which like to dance in these wooden clogs at all hours of the night and upset the residents of the town or village. I'm going to say a village. This is in the north of the UK, so I'm going to say a village. The Hayward Boggarts, and then at the end it has this section called Some Odd Boggarts, which has that picture there, and this talks about several boggarts in one chapter, kind of like a snippet of okay, these are some boggarts that couldn't get their whole chapters in, I guess. So this was a very, very good book. The only downside about this is that it does have a lot of language that was used back in the time of when these stories and events apparently happens. It does tell you that straight off the bat. It does say that right at the start of the book, so you should be aware about that going in. When this happens, I I either didn't know how to pronounce the words, or I basically had to like read it and just say, right, that's basically what it is trying to say. It wasn't a big deal, but it was the biggest dislike I had with the book. But if you are interested in Boggarts and in British folklore, then I would highly recommend this book. As I said, there are only 500 books, or 500 copies of this book rather, out there, but I picked it up relatively cheap. I wouldn't really pay an arm and a leg for this if you came across it, but it is definitely an interesting read, and it's something I could see myself rereading every year, to be honest. It's very charming, it's um, very mysterious, it's very interesting to read about these creatures who I have become incredibly fascinated by. Yes, it does um, discuss or touch on some boggarts that Dark Side of the Moor talked about. Like there's this I won't say boggart, but there's a witch in this which doesn't like it when children take her nuts, and it does talk about boggart whole cloth. I think that's what it's called at the end of the book. So that was brought up in his channel, which was the first ever boggart video I watched from that channel. And additionally, witches and witchcraft are a massive part of this book. It seems like boggarts and witches go together really well. Um, you never really see one without the other. And you may be thinking to yourself, well, yeah, witches didn't exist. I suppose they must have done at one point in some shape or form. Whether it was like some elderly women out in the forest that were shunned by their villages and their communities and believed that they had these mystical powers, and maybe boggarts existed. It's quite plausible that maybe realistically boggarts were nothing else but hermits living in the woods that were either shunned from their communities or maybe had a mental disability and that were living in the woods, or maybe um, there were people that were willingly living out in the woods that just wanted to be left alone. So they um, wore all these elaborate costumes and makeup and um, tried to be a big nuisance to members of their town and their communities. Whether they were real life creatures and demons, again, it is possible that these monsters maybe existed and they died out and no one's seen them. I mean, different species are extinct all the time. Um, but it's definitely an interesting subject to me, and it's one that fascinates me. I also want to touch on the fact that, as far as I can tell, I cannot find out anything at all about H.F. Morton, either online, and I'm pretty sure that this is the only book that is out there about him or by him. And this wasn't even published by Morton himself, this was compiled by someone that he used to read these stories to. So if you are interested in Boggarts and British folklore, then I would highly recommend that you read this book. Of course, I'm going to recommend this to Dark Side of the Moor as well. This isn't that long, this is only about 50 pages long. And I feel that this would be something that they would really love and appreciate, even if they don't like reading. So guys, that's it. That's been my video. Let me know, what did you think about it? Have you heard of Boggarts? Have you read anything about Boggarts? Have you got any Boggarts related stories. Have you got any recommendations for books or maybe locations of Boggarts that you think that I would actually be interested in? I know that Boggarts are like one small section of British folklore. There are many different creatures based around British folk tales and British folklore. But you know, I don't know. It's just it has a unique charm to it. I think that's as a whole. I think that's what has attracted me to it and the intrigue. So that's it, guys. That's been my video. I'm probably going to rate this a 4 stars out of 5, and that's purely based on the fact that it did have quite a lot of old um, Lancashire language in it. So that's been my video, guys. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you on my next one.